Yeah, just happy to meet you, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful to meet you. And I'd like to begin our journey, which I do every time. It's a question that I've tried to put away, but it's so prevalent. The pandemic, the COVID pandemic happened 5 years ago. It changed our lives, the way we lived them. How did you get through that time period, and how has it changed or affected the way that you live your life today?
Wow, that's an amazing question. Yeah, so for me, work-wise, it didn't have much difference on my work life because I work at home anyway. I'm a freelance translator. I'm a medical translator. The big change for me, Joe, was when my family, my wife and two kids were with me in my working space. So I was kind of used to having the flat to myself, 90-meter flat, and then suddenly my children and my wife were there, and we were doing things on the computer for the kids at school. So that was a big change. I had to kind of adjust by them being around me in my working hours, not just my free time. But actually, work-wise, it didn't have a massive impact on me, nor did it on my income until I would say the rise of AI has had a much bigger impact on my income than the pandemic. So I think that's because I was already very much in the online space, Joe, as a as an online business owner. So in that sense, I don't think it really had a massive impact. The thing with the family, it definitely did. My elder daughter, I think, was 13 at the time in 2020, and she adapted much better than my younger daughter, who was 11. She needed that kind of, person-to-person contact.
Yeah.
So one worksheet a day became like one worksheet a week, and then the frequency of became very difficult to get but the elder kids very much adapted to online learning very quickly.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis as a translator. And to do that, I'm going to take you to career day at an elementary school with 12-year-olds in the room. And one of the kids is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
Okay, so if I go back to high school, I would be talking about using languages as a career. So at school, I was pretty good at languages and music. I mean, I was talented in those subjects. I was pretty mediocre to poor in natural sciences. I was good at math. But yeah, I knew I wanted to be a scientist. I actually went to medical school and I started training as a doctor. And halfway through, I thought, well, clinical medicine is not really for me. I was kind of in a coercive environment, family-wise. So it wasn't really, I wasn't doing the choosing, someone else was. So it's one of these classic examples. You're leading a life someone else wants you to lead. So yeah, being a translator and interpreter, it's great. It's amazing. You get to meet some very interesting people. You get to use languages daily. Yes, the industry is suffering a little now, but I would say if you are adept at reinventing yourself, Joe, and I just turned 50, so I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they expect things to be the same decade after decade, and they find it difficult to recast themselves, reinvent themselves. And that's probably true for the older workers, people 60, 65. I've had calls with 75-year-old people who still in the work game. So it's a great career. I've been lucky that I did go to medical school so I could specialize gradually in medical translation. So I would do clinical trials. I would do medical research and reports. What other people would find quite technical and difficult, I actually found easier because I'd done some hospital medicine and seen patients. All those tricky acronyms that we trip us up all the time in reports. And those are lucrative documents, Joe. You can make good money translating reports and research. So I've been very lucky, and I'm still surviving, the AI crisis. I'm still trying to work out what to do on the consultancy side, and doing bits and pieces like the podcasting and going on shows like yours. And I have my own show, which is great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I consider myself very fortunate, and I would not discourage high school students from pursuing a career in language.
So let me ask you this. What did you want to be at 12 years old? What was your dream job? What was your ideal life?
I don't think I had a firm idea at age 12. I knew what I was good at, languages and music, so French, German, music, maths. I could have become a bean counter. I could have told, companies how many beans to, optimize their human resources and actuarial science or something. I don't think I had an idea at 12. And then gradually I had this sort of pressure from behind, which was very adverse, I have to say. So on the one hand, it did give me the technical background in medicine, but on the other hand, I clearly wasn't going to be a doctor age 21, which is when I left. So I was 3 years in. I was into year 4 of a 5-year program before I decided to to bail. So it's quite a traumatic and fraught decision. But it's also adversity and sort of spinning adversity to help you later on. So I got into, what I'm doing now. And I decided to be a scientific translator whilst I was on an Erasmus in Strasbourg. I was studying orthopedics, rheumatology, and geriatrics, I think, in Strasbourg when I was 21, top end of 96. Before I was 20, I was 20 actually. So then I went back and I actioned that. I left clinical medicine and I went into scientific translation. So that's what I've been doing the last 25 years. But I wouldn't say I had a firm idea at 12. Some people are very clear about this. My elder daughter wants to be a fashion designer, and she's, age 18. She's asking for grants and, applying to these cool places. And that's I admire her enormously, but we haven't put any pressure on her, the pressure I received. So I think it's easier for her to perhaps have those things clearer.
So, what were take me back to where you were born and raised? What were the foundational elements of you being into music and languages and getting into medicine? What were those foundational building blocks that were embedded in you?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the UK. I was born in Aberdeen, Scotland, although I grew up in Birmingham, which is the second city. And I was raised by two music teachers. So my mother and father were actually music teachers, piano, violin, keyboard was my father, and piano and violin was my mother. So I was very early on exposed to music. And music has played a very important part in my life. Less so now, but it has played a part. It was just the sort of coercion. Yeah, I mean these things. I'm only just starting to talk about these things publicly as part of an ongoing therapeutic process. But they were both very disordered people. They had my mother was a borderline. She had a borderline personality before we even knew what borderline was, which is a mixture of psychosis and paranoid neurosis. It's very unstable relationships, fear of abandonment. And my father was a very antisocial personality, very talented piano, but at the expense of his social relationships. And so that was very difficult. So they were bouncing off a lot of unstable emotions among themselves. So that was a very difficult, I would say, dangerous environment to grow up in. It was abusive. There was some physical abuse. There was heavy emotional abuse. So adult life has been not easy taking control. So it was a very adverse, without going too much into it, it was a very adverse childhood. But it did expose me. The positive things were I think it did expose me to music early on, which was very good. And then I've just literally a couple of weeks ago started a WhatsApp group with two people I studied music with, two friends when we were 14 to 16, what we call the GCSEs, which is the secondary, the school leaving certificate age 16, and whatever you guys that call that, that's grade. I don't know what it is, but and that's been very therapeutic, sharing with them pieces of music that we like and enjoy and relating it to aspects of our life personally. And I was in a tough point of this, this music gave me relief and solace. And that's been quite therapeutic. And I don't do therapy formally, but I do reflect on the past and, current emotions and emotional management. I think it is ongoing, whatever age you are. And I just turned 50. I haven't been in therapy since I was 42, was when I left. I think I started when I was 33. My eldest was 18 months. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to sort this out, or I'm in big trouble. I was having trouble with her emotions, and I could barely control my own emotions, let alone a 2-year-old. So I'm glad I did ask for help, and I got the help I needed. But those were the kind of foundational. My mother was from Sri Lanka, so I come from a bicultural background. She was half Sri Lanka. My elder daughter is just about to, in 8 days' time, go to do an 8-week stint in Sri Lanka. She's going to teach English to Buddhist monks and children in a school, and then she will look after turtles, turtle conservation for 2 weeks, which sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing that myself. So she's doing something I wish I had the opportunity of doing when I was 18. And we live in Spain, Joe, where nobody takes a gap year. I think you guys probably do in the States. A lot of people from Spain go over to the States and they learn English in a high school year, and they slot into the States, but it's very unusual. So I said, look, if you're going to do this, the time to do it is 18 to 19. Do it now, and she has, and she's got a wonderful year mapped out, and is really, so I'm really really happy for her. And I'm not as nervous as I thought I would be. I have to take it to the airport next week, and hopefully I'm going to be okay,
Yeah.
balanced, and just just stay safe, look after your devices, don't get into any trouble. You recall the tsunami probably in 2004. There was a very serious tsunami. One of my cousins perished that day, sadly. So, there are worries that there are always worries. I mean, you never know. Today she was very affected by the shooting that you guys have had in the Utah University. Just a very shocking, gun violence. Violence, very divisive. One side thinks this, the other side thinks this, and violence is never a way to resolve these issues. So we were talking about that today, and there is danger wherever you go. There is no if you leave the house, you're in danger.
Yeah.
So as a parent, I think you have to sort of just come to terms with danger and just sort of control what you can control, and then stop trying to be controlling over the things you can't control.
So Sri Lanka, I always remember Arthur C. Clarke moved there and talked about it. He was like one of the
Correct.
best kind of poster children for that. He loved it, absolutely glowed about it.
He did. He had that wonderful book, The World of Strange Powers, in the
Yeah.
1950s. He passed a few years ago. He was a very staunch follower, loyal follower of Sri Lanka, and he went there in the 50s. I think he had a house there. So, yeah, we're lucky. He's one of the big names who did go out there. Yeah, it's a beautiful country. It's obviously former British colony. It's up until 1948. There's a nice independent square. And so my mother was born in 1934, so she would have lived the first 13 years of her life, 13, 14 years under colonial rule. So, white uniform at school. And a lot of the childhood figures I had, Joe, were British nuns and missionaries who'd been in Sri Lanka in the 1930s, 1940s. So I would call one of the nuns Auntie Sister. Her name was Sister Celestine. And I could see the impact these people had on my mother's life. There was a lot of emotion when Auntie's sister Celestine died in '88. We sent flowers, and my mother was very upset. So I could see the impact of There were some figures I met too. I didn't quite work out what the relationship was with my mother, but it was certainly to do with Sri Lanka. So, when she came over in 1970 as an immigrant, I suppose, from a third world country or a developing country to the first world. It was very interesting for her, age 36, to come over and, single. And she met my father shortly after. So, yeah, it's a nice story. I think my life is more interesting in Spain than perhaps other people because I have this kind of colorful background. And I'm delighted my daughter is exploring her roots. I've given her photos, and suddenly she became interested, asked me a lot of questions, which I happily answered. And it's great to see your children, although she never met my mother because sadly she passed in 2001. It's just nice that she's going to her grandmother's country and gets to know her family roots, Joe.
So who's been that inspirational force for you to evolve and to get over the childhood, that part of your life and to become who you are today? Who has been that hero?
Um, I don't think there's been a single sort of figure. I've had mentors over the years. I mean, I've taken myself outside of a simple service provider mentality. I think I've explored entrepreneurship, and whilst I haven't really hit on the product's market fit that will make me a lot of money. I have explored life outside of time for money because I think the service provider mindset is very much here's some time, money, time out, money in. And I think what I teach people or try to teach my followers is that there is life outside of that mindset, and you can build assets and products starting with a simple lead magnet, so PDF downloadable, just to spark conversations. You can go on a podcast platform, meet incredible people like yourself doing incredible work. And that's just exciting. I mean, this is an amazing platform that Alex has built and allows us to connect globally with people. A lot of the people I connect with are in the US, in your part of the world. But I wouldn't say there's been one figure. I've been rolling entrepreneurially about 3 years. And I would say what instigated it was a bit of a health crisis, Joe. 3 years ago, the pandemic, I did get COVID. For a second time, I recovered. Then I got pneumonia at the base of my right lung. And then suddenly I was flat on my back in the ITU with multi-organ failure. So things were looking pretty grim I felt a lot healthier than they told me I was, but there was things, serious things going. Liver was packing up, the heart was failing. I'm medicated for heart failure today. So I guess that was a kind of an inspiring. It was a sort of a pivotal point of inflection where I said, "Well, look, let's do this coaching business you thought about doing, and getting into products, which I did, and I'm still, enjoying that alongside my time for my money work gives me a living, and then I get to play in the entrepreneurial space. So I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. So what gets you up every day to do this work at a high level, to take care of your own soul, your family? What is that collective energy for you every day?
You mean apart from the mortgage?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously you've got to go to work, and I make sure I like to consider myself a high performer, and I make sure I have enough time for money work to pay the bills, and then I do have time on the side to write books and think about personal branding from my point of view. Try to get myself into a category of one, which is through an authority framework. So you have to say, well, I stand for this, this, and this, and nobody else is doing this the way I think about it. So that's kind of what I like. I like the idea of helping people get the very best out of themselves. I think that's very exciting work to do. And to do coaching, you need to squeeze the juice, squeeze the most amount of juice from the business squeeze. I think one of my mentors used to say that. So I like feeling that I'm doing it for myself, and I like to feel energized, and sometimes I feel a bit of low energy, and I'm very aware of how much energy I have and the exercise I have to do, and just walking and just oxygenating my brain and thinking. Many of my ideas come from just walking around, or sometimes in the shower. It's not behind the desk. And I like helping other people to do that as well, Joe. I like people to feel as if they're getting the very best out of themselves, learn skills, learn entrepreneurship, learn about asset building, get magnets with which you can attract paying customers to you. And that's very difficult. My industry is in trouble. It's not the most affluent of industries. We're often taught solve rich people's problems. So I think one of my problems is I'm selling to an audience that is not as affluent as perhaps other audiences. But it's difficult. It's difficult to hit on the right problem, and it's difficult to get the problem to fit the market. So to get a product market fit that hasn't already been done. I mean, I think originality is greatly overrated. I think it's very, very difficult to come up with something these days that hasn't already been done. It has to be not. That's not to say I'm not saying everyone go and plagiarize someone else, but it is very difficult to be original today. That's one of the biggest challenges I think we face as entrepreneurs.
So, if you had a dream tonight and you ran into a much younger version of you, 18 years old, trying to figure out the world and your place in it, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you give that young version of you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. If I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old self, I would say take a gap year at 18, go to Berlin for a year and perfect your German. I would say start investing in my 20s or even in my late teens. Just get the benefit of compounding, even if it's $50 a month or $20 a month, just get that compounding. The same advice I give my daughters. And I would say, choose my own path. I would be much less influenced by others around me with power over me. I would try to go my own path, even if that meant lying to the parent coercing me. I would say, sure, I'm going to do medicine, but then I would go and do, French, German, and maths and music or whatever I wasn't allowed to do. And that would be the advice. I would say financial asset management, skills and less people pleasing. I was a people pleaser when I was 18. I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So when somebody came calling the shots and just organizing my life, I kind of said, "Oh, that's okay. Someone else is taking control of my life," until I realized that wasn't the life I wanted to live.
So, of everything that you've done up to this point in your life, accomplished and evolved to, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Uh, yeah, it's got to be my daughters, Joe. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing I've really done that makes me prouder than what they're doing. Yeah. That's the biggest. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm proud to have provided. I mean, a father has to provide, right? If you have kids, you have to provide for your kids. That's expected. But they've grown up into, without really doing too much other than just being there. They've just grown up into incredibly independent, very self-minded, good people. And I think compared to the way I was that age, that's the thing that makes me the proudest. And it's incredible how it just seems as if this time has gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because I've just turned 50. My eldest has just turned 18. And it just seems to have gone in a heartbeat. But yeah, the family would be and I'm better at being a dad than a husband for sure. I think that's easier to be a dad than a husband. I think most people would relate to that, but I'm an okay husband. I could improve here and there. But yeah, I definitely take the dad work very seriously. And I was always very sort of fixated on giving them what I didn't have. I didn't have a stay-at-home father, so from the age of 8. So I was very obsessive about that, probably going a bit too much in the other direction over attention and making sure they got everything. I think that's a sign of the times as well, Joe. Our parents were not the same as we are, an intergenerational thing. Trauma gets kicked down generations until someone sort of heals and says that's enough of this trauma, and and then heals and just becomes a danger for the rest of the family system. So that's certainly what happened in my case. But yeah, to answer the question, it would be my daughters, absolutely.
So, Jason, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you're in control. You run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a reasonably legit guy with flaws. Far from perfect. Mental health and emotional management, that's always been a weak point, but it's something, so I just started journaling, for example. I just started journaling at the behest of my elder daughter. She got me for my 50th birthday a few pages of a journal, which I've been doing, and that's an amazing exercise to just sort of force you to think about the questions intentionally and write them down, even if it's in a illegible scroll. I think my clients and family would see me as a fairly serious, responsible guy. I'm not the kind of guy who's sort of very lighthearted and too jocular around the place. But I think I've always been pretty serious since I was a child, and facing mental health problems within my family and having to deal with the emotional aftermath of that. So I think that's how they would see me: serious and responsible, hopefully reliable as well.
So, if anybody wants to reach out, they want to learn more, hire you, any of the good business, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so if you go to entrepreneurialtranslator.com, that's me, or my LinkedIn, if you just type in entrepreneurial translator or Jason Willis-Lee, as in Bruce Willis and Bruce Lee, Willis-Lee, you'll find me, and I'm good for medical translations or any translation from French and Spanish into English or other languages, and I do a bit of consultancy as well. So you can find me at entrepreneurialtranslator.com. Love to say hi to you there.
Wonderful, Jason. I'll put those links in the show notes. So great to meet you, man. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and excellent questions. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.